Where's Creed? Creed?
Here.
Quality assurance. Your job. I really think you screwed the pooch on this one, Creed. Because of you, the entire company is in jeopardy.
Welcome back to Thinking Critical. This is Wes, and you might not have known it. This last week has been Comic-Con at Home, which was the kind of hastily put together last-second replacement for San Diego Comic-Con when it was shut down. Everything was really virtual, and judging by social media and buzz and news articles and things like that, it feels like it probably missed the mark by a wide margin. And here to talk with me about this is my good friend Perch. How you doing?
I'm doing great. Yeah, good to talk on this subject. It's something I've been thinking about a lot too.
So before we get into it, I do want to say, if you haven't subscribed to Thinking Critical, definitely consider subscribing. I would really appreciate it. If you enjoy the video, give us a thumbs up. If you don't enjoy the video and you think Perch and I are idiots, give us a huge thumbs down and let us know why in the comments down below. We love the feedback. We like the engagement. And also, there's going to be a link to Perch's channel in the video description. And in the last 30 seconds, there will be an icon where you can select and go subscribe to his channel as well if you haven't done that already. All right, Perch, now getting back to it. This seems like it was a complete flop. Gio, have you heard anything? Like, I think there was news coming out of Comic-Con at Home, but
no, it was very, very little. No, it definitely landed as a flop. And unfortunately, and it needed to do well. I mean, I think the publishers, the industry is at least somewhat aware that the idea of a convention of these kinds of activities are not going to happen this year. And we're not sure when next year this stuff will pick back up again. Will people feel safe? In Seattle, the Emerald City Comic-Con is at least floating the likelihood that the spring Seattle Comic-Con is not going to happen in 2021 and would need to happen later in the fall. A lot of people speculating on that fact, and I think it's probably likely. So this needed to go well, and this, because of the brand recognition, the fact that everybody knows San Diego Comic-Con, it's kind of the centerpiece. It needed to be the template for how it was going to be done for the next year, so that we could continue to get news out, information, get some attention on creators, etc. And it fell entirely flat, leaving a lot of people in an unknown state.
I didn't know what the schedule was. I didn't know if there was a panel that I would be interested in. As far as I know, they had all-star panel guests, but they didn't really have anybody that was hosting panels that would have brought me in. Like, nobody with any brand recognition or name recognition in comics or really in movies, for that matter, were brought in to host these panels that could have got the word out, maybe did some promotion for these panels to bring people in. And, there was basically zero fan interaction on almost every one of these panels. The comment sections were turned off for the Comic-Con at Home YouTube panels. Terrible idea. There weren't any panels for Marvel Studios, Lucasfilm, DC Films, mainstays at San Diego Comic-Con that really bring in the buzz. I believe it's in Hall H, where people would go down and you get that huge crowd where all that enthusiasm and just kind of ripples through the entire con. There were some announcements. Like, there was an announcement for information for Marvel 616, which is going to be on Disney Plus. There was also an announcement for Bill and Ted Face the Music, but both of those were spoiled days before. There was almost nothing new brought to the table during this. They really need to rethink this and how they want people to interact with it. And what is it supposed to do besides just talk? Like, it needs to have a purpose for the panels, and it should be with interaction and discussing things with fans and really announcing new things happening.
They do. I mean, I think that the convention has needed to figure out fan interaction for a while. And in fact, if you go back to, I believe, 2017, the Comic-Con was soliciting a lot of surveys around how do we get fan feedback and fan interaction better, because they recognize that there's these long lines. There's cosplay, which is kind of the fans' way of getting involved, but the panels and things are typically one directional. And so, how do we get this feedback? How do we make it more interactive? They felt like that was really critical. And this moment would have been a good one. I understand why they want to turn off the comments. Undoubtedly, some groups would go in there and just review bomb and blow things up out of an agenda. They, on all sides, you'd see
that's
that
a part of YouTube culture. If you don't want that, don't use YouTube.
Exactly. So I mean, the problem is you have to suck it up and just face that you're going to get that. I think the penalty of turning off the comments is worse than leaving them on and dealing with that noise. Yes, you're going to get some noise, you're going to get some spamming, you're going to get some other things, but you're never going to crack this, fan engagement, being able to feel like it's an open two-way street if you don't do it. And honestly, I mean, do what you have to do. Bump up on moderators if you have to during live chats, whatever you have to do. But, trying this stuff out and not going perfectly is still far better than just turning off the comments, making it look like it's kind of this insular hidden thing. Meanwhile, you got all your creators at home with these kind of generic backgrounds. It's not, like you said, it was a failure. There were not compelling news announcements. The ones that were there kind of were spoiled beforehand or in other places. They didn't go through the con, and it made it feel very pointless.
Yeah, normally we get these amazing trailers. I remember I would always be super excited because you'd hear the description of the trailer that was released exclusively at the con, and then you would see it maybe a week or two later. They finally release it on YouTube or whatever. But there's none of that excitement. What was the 30-second Star Wars teaser or the next big MCU announcement that came out? And they're just not having anything of that there. There's no buzz. It's just a bunch of people talking about stuff people already knew.
Well, exactly, and it's and there were things you could do. I mean, in fact, in many ways, because everybody's in some cases trapped at home, and you do have things shut down. It's an opportunity to do a lot of kind of one-on-one panels where you could have a moderator talking to an actor for 20 minutes about something they've done. You can have a moderator talking to a comic book creator. Maybe even somebody who's more of a legend, get a George Perez in there who doesn't want to travel to the cons anymore, but he's at home now. So arrange for a 20-minute session talking about kind of the favorite moments of his career. Frankly, like you do on this channel, when you have guests on, just do that. Roll a bunch of these things out. Roll a video out every 15 minutes over the course of 3 days, just talking to the creators, having some engagement in the chat. You could even you could do super chats and raise money for the comic book legal defense fund, whatever. There's tons of things you can do, and it came across as poorly planned, no real agenda, and the panels themselves, the things that you did watch, were awkward and flat. I mean, it was like the worst parts of the in-person panels without any of the fan engagement and preparation, and it was a huge disappointment. And again, unfortunately, the other cons really needed to have this template, this example of what they could do to keep interest going, and they didn't get that. So now it's up to whoever's next to do this right, and many won't bother.
I think they're going to rue the day that they didn't think maybe let's bring in some YouTube veterans that are used to interacting with this audience, that are used to catering information and products for this audience, and let them kind of moderate and run some of these things. Like, bring a comics explained in, bring a comics historian, bring some of these higher profile people, some of the people over from Collider, although that seems to have fallen apart as of late. But some of the schmoes knows guys to come in and talk about movies or something. People that have some clout on this platform and know how to cater information. And if they see that the panel's not working or the guest isn't being engaging, can just refocus the discussion and maybe get some spark to it, because just having a bunch of people that are fans or think that they're professionals in the industry but haven't really done YouTube or aren't successful at it is just a bad idea.
Yeah, I mean, how hard would it be? And even though I don't think so the names you mentioned would be a far better choice, but you could have, Marvel does have a media department that makes videos, or the content of the videos is questionable, but they understand the platform, they understand how to work the technology. How hard would it have been for example, that group to simply interview the creative team on every one of the titles they publish? That would have been a lot of videos, but just do a 10-minute, hey, what's coming up in your book? What are you excited about? What can fans look forward to? Give us a 30-second little sales pitch about what's going on. Just do that. Have a little pre-recorded panel, premiere then every single one out on YouTube through the Comic-Con banner, and roll them out. 2 days of Marvel. We're going to walk you through every single one of our titles. The cost to that would have been, basically paying somebody to moderate that you're already paying them, and just record it on Streamlab or something. I mean, it would be the easiest thing in the world to do. And the fact that they didn't do that, or they didn't even put in that minimal effort, means that this show was really an afterthought. What this means to comic fans and everything else is when this thing comes back, it will be smaller. And the other cons have a problem now because we don't know when they're going to. So we'll see a lot fewer Comic Cons going forward. There's going to be less. And I think the people who work from this are certainly the publishers, the creators who have up and coming projects, the creators who rely on, meeting some fans, maybe getting some commissions and other things. They're left out in the dark. And there continues to be this problem of no platform right now for the industry to really handle this new world. And I think maybe this new world isn't going away completely ever. We'll get away from some of this social distancing and all the rest, but things are not going to go back completely to the way they were. So these things have to be figured out.
It's not just you and I having some general observations or noting some of these things, no real articles, nobody talking about these things on social media. There's actually metrics that kind of back this up. And these are borderline staggering regarding Comic-Con at home, social media interaction versus 2019. And this is according to social media analytics from Listen First, who monitors it. It makes reports on things like this. They said tweets mentioning Comic-Con at home were down 95% compared to San Diego Comic-Con 2019. Tweets about the top 10 TV events at Comic-Con at home were similarly down 93% from the previous year. Tweets about the top 5 movie panels were down an astronomical 99% from the previous year. People just weren't talking about it, on social media. It's crazy.
Yeah. No attention, no buzz. Yeah, absolutely. Those numbers are horrifying. Those are what kill off doing this again in the future. I mean, it won't matter if in 12 months, everything's back to normal, we can go back to the halls. This takes away a lot of an audience. It's like with comics. When you disappear for a while, when you finally come back, some people won't come back with you. The magic of Comic-Con was suffered a lot. And what's crazy about this is the topic of Comic-Con, comics and shows and movies and games. Those are all things we can do at home. They're actually perfectly tailored things for the situation we're all stuck in right now. So if anything, you should have seen a stronger engagement. You should have seen more people at home getting pumped and excited. You should have seen companies really lean into this. You should have seen the exact opposite of what you saw. We had a chance for think about this. You should have had a much wider audience for Comic-Con, because instead of having to travel to San Diego and sit in front of a panel and then hear news, secondhand from a news site, or maybe wait for a trailer to drop, all this stuff was being beamed to your living room, everyone's living room. So the audience should have been far larger. But the fact that it had a 95% drop off and the reach was way bigger than what was in that hall. I mean, that's just that it's a pathetic failure.
All right, so I got numbers for that as well as far as the reach, and we're going to talk about the average views on Thursday, which had the longest viewing period for people watching the streams on the San Diego Comic-Con YouTube channel, and they were hovering around 15,000 people per panel, which is pretty good if you think about it. But when you consider the amount of people they probably expected, it is actually quite small. The best performing movie panel, and this might shock you, at Comic-Con at home was actually The New Mutants, which had 208,000 views. But if you think about it, it's also the only one that debuted a first look of an opening scene that no one had seen before. So it actually had new footage that had not been spoiled yet. It was also the most discussed panel on Twitter because of that. So actually a movie that nobody believes is probably going to come to theaters. Probably, we all know it's kind of left over from Fox. It's not key to what Disney's doing with the MCU or the X-Men moving forward. It's an afterthought. Was the most discussed panel because it actually had something new to give people. When talking about TV shows, the AMC's The Walking Dead panel actually performed the best. That's because it included an announcement that season 11 would be delayed due to the ongoing pandemic. People kind of assumed that, but it was actually confirmed for the first time there. And if you look at the views on there, I believe it's over 84,000 views right now on YouTube, which would be amazing for your channel or my channel, but for San Diego Comic-Con's channel,
yeah,
that's a dud.
No, an absolute dud. And I think I'm glad you brought up New Mutants, because I think of all the panels, that one probably they did it right. That was, take that, what they did there, and just clone it to every other show and streaming service and movie. And now I get that a lot of movies are on pause, so maybe you don't have things to say, but what has been on pause more than New Mutants? I mean, that thing has been on pause for years. So, I mean, if they can pull it off with a compelling panel, show some footage, have a talk about things. We learned a couple things about the film, got some interest in it. If they can do it, everybody can do it, because they've been in this situation far worse. So they did it well. That was the example of a group that, even though the numbers were low, the numbers would have been higher for everyone if more people would have been following that example. If you would have had, 30 movie panels like the New Mutants panel, then everybody's numbers, including the New Mutants panel, would have been higher. Mm-hmm. But nobody, they were the only one that I saw that did anything close to that. Everybody else did just very, very poor panels, and the comic ones were arguably even worse. There no relevant information came out, and it was just
a lot of those had fewer views than a normal video on my channel. Not even one of the hot topics. I was shocked. Yeah,
I agree. My channel is much smaller than yours, and my numbers routinely beat the majority of those panels that came out, and by big name writers, and that should not be.
We're not bragging about our channel. We're just shocked at what the viewers on those panels were. Obviously, people didn't know they were out there.
I did a Comic-Con Day 1 wrap up, intended to do one for every day of the show. There wasn't enough news on day 2 to do a video. There wasn't the only news coming out of that show at that point was Tom King's tweets, and so but the hits for that day 1 news cycle were much larger than the panels on day 1. It just, again, like you, I'm not bragging about that. It's just that is completely and utterly wrong.
Mm-hmm. All right, so I got a couple of things I do want to discuss, not specifically about Comic-Con at Home, before we wrap this up. The first one is that we know San Diego Comic-Con had to take out a PPP loan. They obviously didn't make any revenue from 2020 San Diego Comic-Con. Is there a chance that it's kind of a scrapped event? Are they going to be able to come back financially from what happened?
Not. I don't think at the same pace. And what's interesting about this is, there's been some battles, at least with the city, because this event takes over the city. So San Diego, on one hand, I think really loves the fact that they're there because it brings a lot of income, and on the other hand, a lot of the locals and residents hate it that it's there because it destroys the town for a week. And
just
so,
like Austin with their movie and music festival.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. So I think that they've been wanting to kind of change up the status. There's going to be less money in the situation. It won't. I suspect it will not be the same. Now, if the world gets back to normal, if people can go and suddenly we can do big events in summer of 2021, which I think is a big question mark whether the world will be in that state at that point. But let's say it is, I can see San Diego Comic-Con trying to do one big mega, let's make up for last year thing, one big party. But I think going forward, you're going to see a trend of this getting smaller and smaller. It's just, they'll find funding because they're the big dog in the room. I think the ones that are going to have a lot more trouble are all the auxiliary ones, the New York City Comic-Con, the Emerald City Comic-Con, what they do in LA and Chicago. I think those are the ones that are going to struggle.
All right, so this is the last question. We know DC Fandome is coming up. It's going to be all about DC Comics, DC Films, DC TV, DC streaming. So it's basically its own Comic-Con at Home, but for DC Comics properties. What can they learn from this? What do they need to do to make it stand out and not absolutely flop, go to flop city like San Diego Comic-Con at Home 2020 did?
Well, I think a bunch of things. I think they have a nice template of what not to do now. I think they should overdo it on content. Get panels and videos going out constantly. Have like if you woke up at 8 a.m., have stuff going continuously until 6. Just
they need to have trailers for stuff they didn't plan on having trailers for. Yeah, trailers for the panels about what they're going to announce.
Yes, absolutely. And then I think they should pre-record a lot of them. Don't have them all be live. There's no value at this point in having them be live. Pre-record a bunch of them, have them run. You're not having the speakers on the panel read the chat comments. It's not like what we do on Comics Aficionados or engaging with the chat audience. They're not doing any of that. So the live aspect of it is kind of pointless. So start filming now. Get a bunch of panels ready today.
They should do the YouTube premiere where the first 15 minutes, maybe one of the panel members is there and they can interact with them as they watch the video.
Exactly. Do that. Bring one person that can write with the chats, probably overdo it on moderators because some people are going to come in with bad intentions for sure. But whatever you have to do there. Make sure that you do get comments. Don't lock it down. That's going to be far worse for you. And I think the other thing is, don't assume that your audience is all up to speed on everything. Remember that things shut down. There's been some awkwardness, and remind people where things are at for your shows, for your movies, for your comics. Just don't be afraid to do some introductions. Treat everybody coming in as if they're a new customer, as if there's somebody who hasn't really seen this service. Maybe they haven't read Bendis to Superman, and give them a reason. Here's what's happened, and here's a reason why you want to read it. I mean, that might be a short panel, but you could do those kinds of things. Bring people to the table. Use it as an opportunity to engage with your audience for the first time.
And definitely, quantity does not equal quality. If you have 8 exciting minutes of content, do not make a 15-minute video, because it's going to feel boring. Give the 8 minutes a sizzle and move on. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I think that's a good point. Be brave and just do an 8-minute video. Just do a 10. You don't need to stretch it out to a half an hour. Just make it short and punchy. That's frankly for social media and for this new world. Shorter is often better. It's easier to share. It's easier to digest. It's easier to understand. If you don't have the content, don't do it. You don't need to have people just kind of awkwardly rambling on like I'm doing right now. You can have it be punchy. Absolutely.
And there's going to be so much content coming out at once. People will feel overwhelmed. Keep the videos short if you can. Obviously, some of the bigger announcements, you're going to want some more, maybe a little bit more pop and circumstance, maybe a little bit more build, but just regular stuff like Ben is talking about Superman, or giving some details on Endless Winter, doesn't need to be 30 minutes.
No, just come in with some details, do it. Don't worry about overproducing it. Just get some solid content out and get lots of it, but short and sweet. Just put it in shape. And I think to your earlier comment, find some people out in the world, and this is not me asking for a job, but find some people out in the world who know how to do this, or who can bring an audience and can get engagement, and bring them in to help. Don't rely solely on your social media team that has never done anything like this before. Don't throw them deep into the pool right, your first go. Get some people to help you. Most will do it for free because they love comics.
All right, Perch. We've gone a little bit longer than we normally do, but there's a lot of information to talk about. A little bit of speculation at the end. I really appreciate it. And if you enjoyed what Perch had to bring to the table and you haven't subscribed to his channel, I think you're crazy, but here in a few seconds, you're going to have an opportunity. It's going to be a nice big logo with his channel on it.
Well, thank you very much for that. And I enjoy doing this and always chatting with you, Wes.